Okay, we'll get going, and hopefully anyone else that wants to join can join during the session. First and foremost, thank you so much again for joining today's very, very interesting webinar on wider community engagement. Just a bit of background, we obviously went to market to ask people's feedback, and this one was a really interesting one where clubs in effect wanted to understand how they could better maximize either their own in-house facility or engage with the wider network, not just their own members, if you like. And with that, we're really, really fortunate to have two not just knowledgeable and excellent people, but people who hopefully can share some good practices in their career to date so far, and more importantly, help with supporting us keep working as a cricket community. Sam Sona. Sam works at the moment for Laureus and for Sporting Equals, got two really important critical roles, working with us in Essex at Barking, but also working widely with both organisations. And we've got Jawar. Jawar is a board member at Essex Cricket in the Community, and also the lead for Recreation and Leisure at Thurrock Council, as well as his hat as a former Director of Operations at London Tigers. So I'm going to pass on to Sam to kickstart, and they'll work together, and I'll be waiting for Sam's nod to change the slides.
Thanks, guys. I hope everyone can hear me as well, and I'm sure, just to add on with our fans' points, if you do have any questions, feel free to throw them into the chat as well, and we can try and answer them at the end. Just to give you a background of my two roles, so with Laureus Sport for Good, I am one of three lead coordinators on a really exciting pan-London programme called Model City London, which is in partnership with Laureus Sport, Nike and the Mayor of London, and it's focused on something called the bottom-up approach, which we'll discuss a little bit later. Essentially giving communities the chance to make decisions and talk about how funding and opportunities should be created with their direct input in a transparent way, and empowering them to make decisions on how sport and physical activity should make true change in their communities. And the other role that I have is I work for a day a week via Sporting Equals within the Borough of Barking and Dagenham on another quite exciting programme called Breaking Boundaries, which uses cricket as a way to bring communities that wouldn't naturally, or they do, use cricket in to bring other groups they wouldn't work together with normally. So for example, a faith group working with school, or a youth club working with a faith group. So, and we have a little bit of funding attached to that, and I work closely with Dan and Arfan and Claire in various ways within those two jobs. But in terms of today, one final bit of background. I just wanted to first of all say that there's nothing here that's suggestive, if that makes sense. I will suggest things, but it's important to think more about power of what you're doing during this very challenging situation and use it as a kind of flip to turn things into opportunities. How do I know that? Well, I've got over 15 years experience of community delivery, so I'm not very good at sitting in offices and typing up lots of stuff. I'm more a get out there, go and meet people. And I'm a former PE teacher. I've worked abroad in international academies, but also one of my specialisms is developing community projects from scratch, and I have my own company in Ealing, West London. So I'm very much on that journey with many of you, writing my own funding bids, dealing with rejection in various ways. Arfan, next slide.
Jawar, do you want to do a very quick introduction to yourself, and then we'll go to the first slide?
Yes.
Hi everyone, I'm Jawar Ali. I work for Thurrock Council as the head of Sports, Recreation and Leisure. Been in the sports sector for a long time. Did my level 2 coaching badges a long time ago, worked in schools for Capital Kids Cricket, worked with Middlesex, and now moved to East London, and I'm part of the Essex Cricket in the Community Board. One of the things that I've done is support local clubs and community groups use sports as a way to engage hard-to-reach groups, and then use sports as a way to really bring people from local communities into club atmospheres and try and progress and become coaches. We set up Tower Hamlets Cricket Club, which was a really good example of young people on a journey from secondary school into clubs, becoming coaches, working in the community and working at different levels. But for 14 years, I was at London Tigers up until 2017, developing it from a small organisation based in North Westminster, working in a specific community, to really going out and expanding its reach across London and internationally with projects in Bangladesh as well. It was exciting taking on land and leases from local authorities and really making community hubs in Southall at Spikesbridge Park. Recently, with my new hat on at Grassroots Trust, we've taken on Seven Kings Park and trying to develop that into a community hub. So a lot of background in doing cricket and sports in general at a grassroots level, but now on the other side, at a local authority, with a local authority hat on, trying to support clubs and trying to marry the importance of following policies and procedures, but again, also supporting clubs. So I've got backgrounds in both sides, and today I'll talk a little bit about the local authority and why it's important to tap into working with your local authority colleagues in sports, education and leisure, and how that can have a positive impact for clubs and community groups going forward. I'll pass back on to Sam and I'll jump in at the end.
Brilliant. Sam, to you, sir.
Yeah, go for it. Thank you, Jawar. And there's some points I'll make that will probably neatly lead into Jawar's experience and recommendations with local authority engagement. These are some of the areas which I'm going to go through briefly in terms of just when I say club engagement ideas, these are things with a lot of the work that I've done personally and professionally that I've fed back in regularly that tend to work or have been working during this period, or things that are being worked towards. I'll go through each of them, and then I've got some sort of concepts for you to consider. And feel free, if anything, you need to have more expanded questions on any of that. But the main thing here is it's about having a think about what you do, why you do it, who your beneficiaries are. Believe it or not, many people still aren't 100% sure who your beneficiaries are, and that's not being disrespectful. It's a form of having a think about quantitative and qualitative aspects to your delivery. Quantitative, the types of numbers you were dealing with up to COVID-19. Qualitative, actually, what were those individuals, either gender, demographic, age, well, postcode, borough, what are they actually gaining from working with you or benefiting from? So Jawar spoke about workforce development in terms of, developing coaches and things like that and beyond. So having a touch on these, going remote online. Now, a lot of organizations have before COVID-19, but even now have been looking at or are going online. But it's important to be clear and almost analyze yourself and be very fair and reach out to your team or as leaders to your beneficiaries and actually ask yourself, what experience do you have going online? Because there are some things you have to consider before you actually jump into that format, or you are in that format. How are you assessing what you're doing? Is it working? Could you adapt it? Could you do more? Could you do less? And I'll come back to that in a moment. And there's some other points I'll make on all of these. The other flip to that is, and this does link into Jawar's point about looking at detached work. Now, in Barking and Dagenham, where most of my 5 days of work, one for Sporting Equals, 4 for Laureus Model City, is we do a lot of stuff that engages with the whole community. And one project that's come up, which is a council initiative, is called the BD Citizen Alliance Network, or BD CAN, which is a response to the physical COVID-19 about organizations of various type. So we've got a mosque, we've got a youth work organization, we've got a youth club, for example, 3 of which happen to be grantees Model City, but also do a lot anyway within the community. They are 3 of several organizations who put their hand up or approached the local authority and said, look, we want to do more than just the sport or the physical activity we're doing. We have the power to reach out to people that you as a local authority may just be struggling to get key messages to those most at risk. So it's having a think really about, are you able to do things during this period that still keep you safe, but actually allow your staff or yourselves to have a think about adapting and planning for the future by doing things now? You may not, but it's still things to consider. And then that links into the next point about adaptive research and development. That's a very scientific term. But the best way to think about that is, how are you planning for a post-COVID-19 world? Now, at cricket, we do that specifically. And we know there is safeguarding and there are specific directives that are coming from the national governing body about how or what potentially, I saw something the other day about the stages that cricket is looking towards in terms of delivering. It's important at this point now to use that as an opportunity to just, again, have a think about, well, would you do more remote stuff? If I use the example of football, the other national sport, a lot of projects have gone online and they've developed an online safeguarding policy, and they've started looking at they said this is going to be part of our business model moving forward. We will do a certain amount of remote work. So those who work with elite players or semi-elite or families that want some one-to-one training, they're ensuring their coaches are now being forwarded towards online safeguarding or even post-traumatic stress training, which is actually available, or even with generic safeguarding, going back to their local counties, football associations, in your own case, cricket associations, and just having a think, what could I do? But we'll come back to that in a moment. And outreach. So this is the chance to be innovative. There is nothing wrong. Remember, a council is not just the council. There are multiple departments in the council that you can potentially engage with. It could be the cohesion team. Now, in Barking and Dagenham, they've redeveloped in the last 12 months their cohesion policy, which happens to actually cover faith groups, quote unquote, the horrible term, hard to reach groups, and also those who generally physical activity wellness can be fed into. Remember, cricket feeds into that as well. So it could be a chance to reach out to them. Many sports development departments and councils have been asset stripped due to austerity, so they don't have funding to give out, but they have opportunity, or they're potentially sometimes given pockets of funding, potentially for breakfast clubs, summer clubs, whatever. It could be a case of just reaching out to them and rehashing that conversation, but in a much more cohesive way based on some of the above. And again, I'll go over that in a moment with some examples of what I've seen and helped projects do in order to retain that. And beyond the council, it could be the local voluntary sector as well. So it's important that there are other routes forward. It's not just the council is one aspect, but where austerity has caused for organizations to pick up the slack per se. So with tendering processes, you may find reaching out to the council, they may forward you to other significant local partners who you could discuss with. It could be just speaking to the parks departments, which I know is a very sore point for many organizations about relationships with working with them. Actually, this could be the chance to say, do you know what, we are a significant stakeholder in your community. It's important we have this conversation because these are the X, Y, and Z ideas we're thinking of. How does that sit with you? And that's, I'm going to talk again later about collaborative practice. The ecosystem mindset. So you guys, majority of you delivering cricket within schools, community settings, elite, all of the above, or some of the above. What else could you do? Do you have members of your team who are interested in other activities? Again, are you actually going back to your beneficiaries where possible, and they are attainable, to actually ask them, are there any activities? I'll give you a great example. So we have another organization we work with on both of the projects that I'm working on, Barking and Dagenham Youth Dance. They went back to their beneficiaries just before the COVID-19 situation came around, because what they wanted to look at was expanding their reach for sustainability. Dance is a very difficult activity, you could imagine, to get funding for, and they have done incredibly well. Part of it is self-funded, part of it is community funded. But they're looking at other things to do. Dance feeds into fitness. Had some feedback, they want to do some more fitness-based stuff. They work with families. Okay, what do the families want? Families want a little bit of dance and fitness, but also some of the families want other things, like, for example, financial support, as in to understand how to budget. Okay, could they look at engaging with the council or the community voluntary service to have somebody, when the time's right, obviously COVID-19 paused that, but to actually come and do financial budgeting and classes while their kids are taking part in their dance activities. Other sporting activities, some of the kids are into their football. So I got BDYD to speak to the local governing body about, actually, look, what level ones are available there, and could they actually do something maybe with a mentor to try and develop football, or bring in a football partner. It's not as easy as it obviously sounds, but it's about having a think about where you're at and where you'd like to be, and do you want to use this situation as an opportunity to move forward. And then that all leads into the final point of workforce development. All of the above feeding into your, do you need to have another look at how you're recruiting volunteers? What support do you need? Are there staff, as I said, who have got several hats on per se, and they're working in other environments? Plenty of people that have worked for me in the past, for example, have been PE teachers doing sports coaching on the side to top up their income. Is that something that they want to explore more with us? Are there any other skills out there that you need that you can approach from just picking up the phone to potentially a rival local organization, actually saying, you know what, this might be the time to actually put our heads together. Is there a way we could come together because we both have the same needs? Arfan, any questions before I move on that have come up in the chat?
Not that I have noticed, no.
Okay, we can move on then. And if I am rushing, there's just a lot to go through, so I apologize. But there'll be plenty of chance to come back to me. I'm happy for my details to be shared out. So I've pretty much alluded to these, but it's just to get them in writing, you know, in yellow. So going remote, be honest with yourself as an organization. This is an opportunity. Yes, if you want to go online, you may not fully comprehend what that means. What I can do, and I will show you at the end, is an example from the Future Youth Zone, who we work with in Barking and Dagenham. You call it a 21st century youth club, all singing, all dancing. But what they've done is, as now a large scale provider within the borough, they've started sharing out some of their policies and their strong safeguarding. So they're a national organization working with via a company called Onside Youth, who haven't, you call them modern youth clubs. But it could be a case of, are you a large scale operator that has this in place? And linking to some of the things I've alluded to earlier and below, is this an opportunity? And collaboration does not always have to be about working together to do joint funding. It could literally be you're willing to take on mentor organizations. Or are you a small to medium sized organization, or just a community organization that runs a handful of sessions that wants a bit of support to look at this? And I've seen and brokered examples of joined up work where we've had organizations come together on Zoom, and they've had the appropriate Zoom policies and procedures put into place. They've had a few practice runs, and they've actually come up with a few ideas as well. I think that's the key, is that it's not just a case of going out and doing something. That's great. It's actually having a bit of a longer think about what it is you're trying to achieve from it. Many organizations have gone online and tried to deliver exactly the same thing as what they were doing offline. It doesn't necessarily, it can, but it doesn't necessarily work like that. And as I've reiterated more than one occasion, this is a really good opportunity to gauge feedback from those who you have worked with about, do they have the right hardware? Can they actually get online? This is all great putting things online, but what are those needs, and are those areas that you can also look at for future sustainability? More and more organization grants are out there are beginning to allow for overhead costs, but I'm aware the skills needed to write those bids is something as well, which I'm going to talk about later. Detached work, as I said earlier. So again, are you actually involved? Do you know someone who's involved in any COVID response local services? Could be a neighbor, it could be another organization. This could be a chance to reach out, and they may not realize themselves the link. Food banks are a good example of where they've been looking at partnerships. So again, in Barking and Dagenham, but beyond, many have joined forces with sporting organizations to help just share out messages. We are still open. We are doing this. We are actually going beyond our original remit. These are our staffing hours. If you have anything you'd like to give to us, these are the rules, etc., etc. So you could find that just on a simple PR level, if I use a crass word, it could be a healthy way for you to actually support your local community in a way that you don't realize, because you all have very large reach, believe it or not. And actually that could give you more food for thought, if you pardon the pun, in terms of where you'd like to go with the work you do, if you're looking at more of a hub mentality. And again, with the detached work, are you aware of the new guidelines that are out there to safely deliver activity? That links into what I said before about remote policies and safeguarding, but there are organizations, which I'm going to speak about later, beyond your national governing body, who also can support you with just a bit of food for thought, again, about how you should be delivering things or modeling things, or how you're going to be planning things for the future. There's a lot of support being increased. What the difficulty is, it's filtering that process to make it appropriate to your timeframes of availability. I'm sure you're all busy, but also it's digestible in a way that you also, if you have questions, you can contact said groups locally, either via the local authority or via the community voluntary service, or via pan-London capacity support organisations that are set up to support you. Last couple of points for this slide. It's important, as I said, to seek feedback from your beneficiaries for your planning. What do they want? And also, have you actually reviewed your business plan or your project plans? It can feel like a huge amount of work. There's actually a really interesting document which I've been sent recently by Sported, who are one of those pan-London organisations I was going to talk to you briefly about, which is just a multi-page document which you can actually sit down with your volunteers, your staff. You can send it even to beneficiaries. You can use it to extract questions from it, to just help you understand more of what they are going through in a semi-formalized way. And you can collate that in your own time. And as I said at the end, outreach, it's a good time to think about collaborating. Safety is the key here for you as well. Remember, as I always say with safeguarding, the most important person being safeguarded is the deliverer. So it's exactly the same thing with what you're aiming to deliver now. Thanks, Arfan. It's an opportunity. No, it's fine. It's an opportunity to think about how you want to be safeguarded but also, are there things you've been trying to work towards that you'd either like to do now, but you may need some support to do it? So could you share resources, or do you need shared resources? Again, safeguarding policies, project planning, how to write funding bids. Do you need new venues? Obviously, we're aware that venues right now are still not accessible. So is this a chance to just reach out to the council or other groups to find out what they're planning? Is this a chance that you need to adapt? And again, with online tools, I spoke about trauma response, or the NSPCC with online safeguarding courses, where I believe they've taken the price down a bit as well for groups who maybe are budget restricted. Is this an opportunity for you to just have a look at your business plan, project plan? And it is important to have one, even with a community organization. It makes you, in the eyes of a funder, if we look at funding and investment for grants, they look on that very favorably. What it doesn't have to be is a work of art. Arfan? Next. And just the last couple of points here. Looking at the ecosystem mindset, if you're wondering what that means, what I mean is that you guys are more than just community resources, banging out cricket. You offer so many different things to your beneficiaries. How are you able to then promote that to areas like funding? And I know I've been on enough forums now to understand, and I myself have the same challenges, believe it or not, when I'm writing funding bids about, am I actually writing the right things, or how many people am I going up against? Well, one thing you can do is actually reach out to some of these pan-London organizations to have those honest chats. Sported, my organization in Ealing is a member, sported.org.uk, and it's free. And what they do is they do a range of things. They help me audit my company from scratch. They give you light touch support. So in other words, you can do it remotely with a professional from the private or community sector who understands what you're trying to achieve. And that you get like 6 hours, I believe, of free support. And I just did 6 one-hour calls with a bit of homework to do. And the audit was just, what's my governance like? How have I got on with funding in the past? Have I got the right community organization set up? Community interest company, charity, social enterprise. What does that mean to me? And then you've got London's, I'm sorry, Sporty do a lot more than that. So they do throw webinars. I've done some stuff on corporate fundraising and other bits and bobs as well around networking and understanding my locality and data collation. It can sound complicated. They really break it down for you, and they give you lots of support beyond what I've discussed. So you have people or persons or departments, even during this period, you can engage with. A really friendly organization. And London Sport, who I work with on Model City, who sits on our steering group, they're a pan-London derivative of Sport England, and they actually have a COVID-19 page, and they, for the East London community, but also North London, South and West, they have a regional coordinator who you can engage with, and I can make an introduction for you as well with said person. The COVID-19 page is quite interesting because it has a range of things, including also a free check and challenge service if you're making funding bids. So they'll actually help you and analyze it with you to actually say, is that relevant? And actually, are you going down the right route and thinking along the right things? Because unfortunately, grants are so varied. It's very difficult sometimes to actually understand what you're bidding towards, or are you just remodeling it to just get the money? There may be other opportunities which are out there. And just to add one thing on that, it's important to also, with all of the points I made earlier, to not be afraid to, as I said, to maybe have a think about, is there a potential partnership with somebody? What's the worst they're going to say? No. But it's about modeling it, as I said to you earlier, having an idea of what it is you're trying to achieve, which gives you a better grasp on who you want to work with, rather than sharing the burden for the sake of it, if that makes sense. And the workforce development, this is a huge thing. Your staff, your team, your volunteers, your whoever they are your eyes and ears on the ground. They are your representatives on the ground. They are the ones who actually, if I'm talking about monitoring and evaluation, they are the ones out there who actually are your community evaluators. So it's important, as much as you get feedback from them at the best of times with how sessions have been going on, or just if they're not working at the moment, how they're coping mentally, because it is hard if coaches aren't working. Actually, you could be engaging them with a lot of the above, which is, what are they interested in? What was good over the last year or two? What's been a challenge for them? What would happen? What would they want from you should this situation ever arise again? So you can't sort of coming up with a pandemic plan. And the bottom-up approach that I was discussing earlier is something we talk a lot about within Model City, because as much as we want people to understand about how funding works and things like that, it's important. If you just move back our fan on that, just last point. Thank you. It's important for your staff to understand about how decision-making is made as an organization. Do remember, they also may know of other organizations or staff who could also come in and support you, albeit through your due diligence to ensure that the appropriate person with their relevant DBS's training and experience. And the last aspect is, as I said, can you offer, or would you like mentoring from other organizations, or even sometimes a local authority, which is becoming a bit more aware of how it can reach out to groups and just signpost them to the support that's needed to become more sustainable and add to their plans. It could be as simple as engaging also beyond that with local CCGs, clinical commissioning groups, which is basically the decision-making arms of wellness and well-being for the NHS. Have any of you actually reached out to your local NHS to actually speak to them about the work you do? Could you guys be seen as actually social prescribing organizations moving forward? So should there be people who need to be taking part in some form of regular local exercise? It could be, for example, the elderly community who may be able to get out once social distancing allows later this year or beyond. Could you be involved in creating programs that are linked around that? And there can be funding involved, although if not, it could be something you're already working towards. But having someone like the CCG on your arm within a funding period or approaching the local authority or whoever it may be, it is a shot in the arm. So you've got, and the VCS is the voluntary community service, which is just the volunteer services. Generally, a lot of councils have tendered that out. Some councils are lucky enough to have it. They sometimes also have other localized support networking and forums. For example, there's one that was embarking in Dagenham that helped me a lot with breaking boundaries, which was a mental health forum. And I engaged with Mind, who then I was speaking to you about up until last year, about supporting some of our organizations with mental health training. And then that's now led into mental health first aid. So there's a pathway. It may not necessarily be an initial pathway. It may be several conversations down the line. Arfan, last two slides.
There you go.
And then I'll hand over. So this is an example of what the Future Youth Zone that I alluded to earlier, they were talking about safeguarding online. And they've got a very comprehensive policy, which they're happy for me to share with all of you that I can forward on to Arfan. But essentially, this is just a snapshot of it's one of the sections they train their staff to do. And the staff have this document near them that they can it's like a prep document, but it also has other elements to it. But if I just allude to one of the points about ensuring you have a copy of your safeguarding policy, point 3, to hand, and you're certain of the thresholds of reporting concerns. This is an example of what I said about making yourself sustainable, because although this is for COVID-19, as I'm sure you realize, this is something that you can use regardless of COVID-19 for any remote work, and it can be adapted for semi-private training or other versions of that you may be wanting to work towards. I should also add, if you do end up working in collaboration with organizations, it's important to have a unified safeguarding policy, which you will sign. It sometimes can be challenging if you will have different safeguarding policies. It's important to have one cohesive document. You may need to create a little small working group and have an individual who is leading on that, or gains experience and support from your local safeguarding policy organizational local organization, for example, within cricket, football, and other ones. They're out there for you to throw your policies at, and they can help you with, does this make sense? Have you thought of this, thought of that? But it's important to have something, is my point. And again, I can share examples beyond this. Final slide. Bit small in the text, apologies. This is an example, what I was saying before, from Sported, and it's just giving you the overview that they send in. It's a project planning tool, and all it does is broken into 2 steps, which is the outline to the plan and then adding the detail. And it's important, as I said, if you look at the bottom, point 2, it's important, it allows you to have a consideration of everything that I've said about, your planned activity, actually understanding a bit more if it is an individual type program or is it being duplicated. By the way, just because it's being duplicated doesn't mean it's irrelevant. So what I mean is, if, for example, you're running a cricket program and someone else is running a cricket program, let's say for argument's sake at the venue next door, you could be doing it for completely different reasons. Yours could be a social inclusion / mass participation program. Theirs could be something that's gender specific for females. So what this project plan is allowing you to do is what do you do? Why do you do it? How are you going to do it? And what are you aware of within your locality? And then it's almost like a working piece that you can use. It's template, so you can just fill bits in to then compare and contrast and then showcase to people that you'd like to work with, but also use that as a way to essentially map the whole of your area. And that's pretty much that. There's a lot there, but I think the most important thing, as I said at the start, is listen, you're all doing great work. And those of you who've had to move online or you've not been able to do as much as you can, just be fair on yourself. This is a very challenging global time, and I've got some friends at the moment who actually are delivering cricket in Beijing, believe it or not, and they've just had it stopped again. They literally restarted the school they were at, and they've had it stopped again because there's been a mini outbreak. And the biggest thing they've said in that part of the world was, we're just going to keep adapting. And at the end of the day, as long as we're in touch with school we work with and the participants and families we work with, that's the best we can do. That's me, unless there's any other questions.
Brilliant. We'll definitely tap into some questions if they do come up. But Jawar, over to you, sir.
Okay, just on my areas. First thing, obviously, delivering in partnership with the local authorities and within the policies. Most clubs that have a cricket pitch or rent a cricket pitch, the clubs are either leasing the land from the local authority or clubs are renting from the local authority. So there's a natural relationship already there with the local authority. And I think it's important that clubs make contact with your local authority and find out what are their views, how much flexibility is there on their side to develop alternative arrangements and run other activities in the spaces that you rent. When can you go back? So it's asking those questions and really just building that relationship. Ongoing dialogue is really important. Some of the key groups to engage, and I think that's where we have a lot of strength within the cricket community, is we have access to a lot of the hard-to-reach groups. So it's trying to get people from BAME communities. There's a lot of research that says BAME people are more likely to be affected by COVID and other issues. So it's trying to activate those inactive communities using cricket. Now that we can't play matches, there are other ways that we can run sessions. We can do small sessions for groups of 6 people. You can have nets. There's online learning. So there's multiple ways that you can engage the different communities. So I think there's an opportunity to just put yourselves out there to let people know that we can work with these hard-to-reach groups. Elderly communities, we've got a lot of people who love cricket, who've been involved for a long time, who have played the game in the past. How can we reach out and reconnect to those people? In every area, there's homes, sheltered accommodation, residential homes. How can the cricket family reconnect with some of those people in those communities, enabling them to share stories? There are a lot of ways. I think it's just that link with the local authority initially. As Sam mentioned, within the local authority, there's lots of different departments. Once you've made a partnership within the local authority, there are many subsections. So the housing association will enable you to link with people living in inner city estates. The adult social care team can link with elderly people in residential homes. And then you've got the girls and women's activation activities. Obviously, there's a lot of programs targeted around girls and women's activities, and there's an opportunity there as well. So by targeting certain specific groups, it gives you an ability to go to a local authority and say, this is what we can offer. We can offer a range of activities for these people. And I think as a club, it's important that we show we're more than just cricket. Cricket, yes, it's our bread and butter, but as cricket clubs, we do so much more, as Sam alluded to. So we need to make that clear, and there's different ways we can bring people in. Some clubs are doing the alternative cricket teas, which is a really good way to show that the club is doing different things, getting involved with food banks, helping the community at the time of most need. Utilizing the club for alternative programs, as mentioned, running health programs, homework clubs, and other things. Interactive ways of engaging with our youngsters who are the Colts members. A lot of traditional clubs have 150, 200 Colts or more. What can we do to engage those young people who are not able to go to school or not able to do much? What things can we do that is fun? So organizations like CKC have been doing challenges where people do challenges and post and there's a league table. So trying to get involved with a range of activities for the different members that we have. Bingo for elderly members and the local community. It's hosting. So one of the key things as clubs, we're a conduit. A lot of people know the club. There's spectators, there's supporters, there's parents, there's children and adults who use the clubs. How can we become that hub for a wide range of activities? We've got a connection for us to set up infrastructure and systems that our membership and their networks can utilize. So if we were to set up community activities or a bingo, for example, there will be, naturally, we've got a target audience, we've got members, and that spreads. And there's a lot of people out there who are looking for activities to get involved with. There's only so much sitting at home and watching TV, and people are looking for as much things as possible to do, not just for themselves, but for their children and their families as well. Winter is going to be upon us very soon. Before we know it, cricket season is going to be over. Who knows how long COVID will be going on for? What can we do in the winter? How can we make, again, the club a hub with an online presence, as well as hopefully, if we can use the buildings again, use the buildings for winter social activities. Something to look at. A lot of clubs have had nurseries and play schools. Again, as restrictions ease, what can we do utilizing our space and partnering up with play providers and nurseries to maximize income? Because some people have been lucky, they've got the grant from local authorities. Some people have got a £10,000 grant, some people have got £25,000 grant. But there are many clubs out there that don't have a lease, that just rent a council facility. They've not received any grants because they're not eligible, because they're not registered with business rates. So what can we do by partnering up with other people to utilize the space, to generate income, to generate revenue? So potentially partnering up with play schools or play providers is one way to utilize the space. Another way is to host events with companies. There's a lot of companies that are looking to host events. They might have wanted to do a big bash out indoors. They might change their plans and do something outdoors. So where there's clubhouses and outdoor spaces, linking up with local businesses to say, why don't you do something here? In Thurrock, what we've done, we've worked closely with the Mazda dealership, with the car dealership, and they'll be running an event at one of the clubhouses locally. So it's, again, just trying to link that partnership, showing there's a space, running corporate spaces. And in the future, if they have a good time, maybe that company will sponsor the local cricket club. So it's just trying to get the best out of the spaces that we have available. A lot of local authorities are being flexible. Within our local authority in Thurrock, we've given a lot of flexibility to community groups to say, you can use the facilities as long as you can provide assurances that you're going to keep the venue safe and you've conducted a risk assessment. What we've said is you can run other activities and even trading activities. A lot of people within their leases, it is very restrictive, where it's only meant to be for a specific activity. Clubs have reached out to us and said, look, we need to do things differently. Can we have advertising boards? Can we do other things to generate income for the club? And we've said we understand the situation and we'll be more flexible. Talk to your local authorities and ask them, if it's a local authority building, can you get a rent subsidy? Are they willing to offset the rent? A lot of our clubs in our borough they pay a very small amount for the leases and for their buildings, because they deliver great social value and are really engaging with the community. So the income that the local authority would miss out on is not a lot. So make that argument and show them what you're planning to do, the wide range of activities and the communities that you're willing to engage, and how you're adapting and responding to the current situation. And you might find local authorities would look favorably, given that the income isn't a lot in comparison to commercial buildings. So, as I said, a good starting point is do speak to the local authorities, have that conversation, explain what you're doing. One of the most powerful ways when you do engage with local authorities, sometimes they know the club exists, but they don't really know what you do. So it's important to mention your membership, your reach, your network. Really let people know how important you are to the community, because you have a lot of local authority officers, as I said, who know on paper what's out there, but they don't necessarily know the great work that people do. And I think it's important we don't take it for granted that people know we're a big club or we work with so many people. How come they don't know about it? So it's important that you make it apparent the impact that you have. There is opportunities going forward. We will all rebuild. Sports, health, recreation is really important. So there is an opportunity for clubs to position themselves. We've had clubs Dorset and Thurrock Cricket Club in our borough have come to us and said they want a new lease, they want a new pavilion with a community cafe. We're looking to support them with that plan. Other clubs are now taking on wider responsibilities. They want to maintain their own pitches and rent the pitches out and generate income themselves and ask for agreements. So there are opportunities, and local authorities are looking to hand over facilities to community groups where possible, because it reduces our liability. The council has to maintain the pitches, maintain buildings, which has a huge cost. If clubs come forward with a sustainable plan, local authorities are willing to listen. So it's a good time to start the conversation and really make those partnerships and really move the agenda forward. And cricket has a really exciting role to play, because most cricket clubs are really embedded in the community, and we have an opportunity really to expand not just the cricket competitively, but on the community side. I think that's one of the key things. And one of the things I must commend, Essex Cricket in the Community has been one of the leading cricket community programs across the country. You know, so many programs with South Asian community, the alternative cricket teas, supporting food banks. Dan, Arfan, Graham and the team, they've been so active. I think, you know, Essex is a leading example. So I'm sure there's support from Essex that clubs can get if you are looking to move forward and really develop the activities through your clubs. Happy to take questions and share more in the Q&A, Arfan.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sam and Jawar. Whoop, I've gone too early there. We've had some good, well, we haven't had any questions, but I'm not too upset with that. I think it's been so informative. We've had so much really, really good information that probably needs a bit of time to just reflect on that. So on behalf of Essex Cricket, a huge thank you to both Sam and Jawar. What I will do is if any questions do come our way, I will take them offline and share them with you. So thank you so much. I think I just did a little bit of a summary in regards of all the information to sort of hold it, and I think hopefully it's helpful. But my sort of summary was, right now is a good time to stop, reflect, review, and be brave on reactivating your club in the community, working in partnership. And I think that's it. You're a hub in the community, and that's probably something that's come out strongly from both of your presentations. So thank you so much. Just a quick update on the plans ahead. The last couple of, I think it sort of flows nicely. We had a webinar on development plans today on the wider community engagement, and this Thursday at 5 o'clock, and it fits nicely as the women's cricket in the future. There's been some brilliant work been going on behind the scenes around the women's game, and I am personally so excited to hear around the information that's going to come out on Thursday. That's 5 o'clock. Please do log in. Once again, Jawar, Sam, thank you so much, and thank you everybody else for joining today's webinar. Stay safe and look forward to seeing you at the next one.